All right, Joel chapter number 3. Joel chapter number 3. And we're going to get one verse tonight, Lord willing, hopefully. And it's going to be verse 2, but we'll start reading verse 1. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So again, here we're talking about the end of the 70th week of Daniel, where he's going to, one, regather Israel, put Israel back into the land, and then at the same time deal with the Gentile nations. And the 70th week, the Antichrist, all of that is designed to purge the rebel, the dross out of Israel. Come over with me to Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah chapter 1. And really that's what the 70th week is designed. Daniel 9:24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and thy holy city to finish, and then he lists 5 or 6 things there. Isaiah 1 verse 25, and I will turn my hand upon thee and purely purge away the dross and take away all thy tin. The dross, the bad, the tin, the phony, the fake. And I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterward thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. If you come over to Ezekiel 20, just so you understand where we get he's going to purge out the dross, purge out the rebel. Ezekiel 20 and verse 38. Ezekiel 20, verse 38. And I will purge out from among you the rebels, and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. So back in Joel 3, when he's purged the nation, his nation, and he's going to set that believing remnant, the represent of Israel, the true Israel of God in the land, and then he's going to avenge his cause against the Gentiles. And that's verse 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So this is where we're at with Joel. Okay, chapter 2, he's established the believing remnant, he's gathered them back together, and then he's bringing them into the land. And then when I do that, I'm then also going to do now chapter 3, and we're in verse 2 starting here, and then really in verse 4 to the rest of the chapter, you're going to see him go after the Gentile nations, pouring out his wrath and so forth. So again, verse 2, I will also gather all the nations. And that's really, we're just going to kind of dissect the verse here this evening, because it's important to understand when we talk about he's going to avenge his cause against the Gentiles, what he's doing. And again, he's going to gather the nations. Come over to Zephaniah, not Zechariah, but Zephaniah, chapter 3. He's going to pour out his wrath upon them. He's literally going to unite them. He's going to create a true united nations, and then he's going to whack them. He's just going to pour out his wrath on them. There will be no peace. The United Nations, let's all get together and we'll yell at each other across the table, and that way we have peace. That ain't going to happen here. So Zephaniah 3, verse 8, is a great verse that gets used in all of this United Nations and unity nonsense. And he says, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord. He's talking to the believing remnant of Israel. until the day that I will rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. God's going to rise up, and He's going to avenge His enemies. He's going to pour out His wrath. He's going to get them all together. I'm going to pour out my wrath. I'm going to get them, all those nations out there that are under the influence of the Antichrist, all of the ones that want to believe the lie and not the truth. I got them all in one place now, and I'm just going to deal with them. So, and that, again, that's where we're at in Joel 3, down to the rest of the chapter. Yes? Yes. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay? So you have to remember, you have to think about this issue of, actually the location of the valley we're going to get into as we go through the rest of the chapter. So not so much tonight, but we'll get into it, especially when we get into Amos and we look at the territory. The Gentile nations, again, the ones we're dealing with the issue of gathering the nation together so He can pour out His wrath, avenge His enemies against the Gentiles. Now, if you come over to Matthew 25, because the timing of when He's going to do this is important, all right? So not only is it important to understand why He's gathering all the Gentiles together to wipe them out, but the timing of it, okay? Matthew 25:31, when the Son of Man shall come in His glory, and all the holy angels with Him, then shall He sit upon the throne of His glory. So this is second coming, the end of the 70th week. And before Him shall be gathered all nations, and He shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats, and He will set the sheep on His right hand, and the goats on His left. Then shall the King say unto them on His right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And we call that the judgment of the nations. So not all Gentile nations are going to be called to the battlefield to then be wiped out, okay? So there are some Gentile nations that are going to love the truth and hate the lie, but He's talking about the ones, come back to Joel 3, the ones that hate the truth and love the lie, okay? And that's going to be important as to remember when we're talking about here, because there are the valley of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat means Jehovah has judged. If you're back in Joel 3, if you look at verse 12, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So it's the valley of decision. It's the valley of Barak. This is this territory where we're going to, during the 70th week, there's going to be a whack. He's going to nail them. And again, that's, as we go through verse 2, we'll see the timing of this is not the end of the 70th week. It's actually in the middle, in the midst of the week. And we'll see that. Notice verse 2. I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, the place of judgment where Jehovah has judged, and will plead with them for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. Notice it's my people, my heritage, my land. Now the my here is God, okay? God says, all that belongs to me. The land belongs to me. The people I'm going to put in the land belongs to me. And the heritage, my plan with that people and that land is mine. He has some, so the land belongs to the Lord. He has some people who belong to Him, and He's got a plan to put those people in that land to do some things and so forth. And He gave it to them by covenant. We've been looking at that that's why we spent so much time looking back up in chapter the end of chapter 2 and chapter 3, verse 1 last time. The Gentiles, I mean, you think about this, my people, in Scripture, 200 and so times, if I counted right, he is called the God of Israel. 17 times he's called the God of Abraham. 13 times the God of Isaac. 28 times the God of Jacob. 200 and something times the God of Israel. So who belongs to him? Not America, not United States of America, not Russia, not Turkey, not Saudi Arabia. Israel does. And that's important to remember as we are going to look through this. A lot of important things to remember, I know. But as we look through this people, this land, the plan, they are His. And the Gentiles are going to come in there and they're going to mess it up. They're going to mess with it. And then He's going to mess with them. And that's what we're looking at here in Joel 3. They've come in and they've messed up the people, the land, the plan. And God says, that's okay, I'm just going to wipe you off the map. And he does. So He's going to gather the nations together, verse 2, to avenge His cause against them. And then He tells us, the end of the verse, what His cause is. So I will also gather all the nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. I'm going to gather up those that are messing with my people, my heritage, my land, and I'm going to bring them into the place of judgment, the Battle of Armageddon, all of that area over there. And when I bring them in there, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And that's what He's going to do with them. Here's the cause that God's bringing against the Gentiles. They are scattered among the nations. What are the Gentiles doing to them? They're scattering them, and then they're parting the land. The two things here that the Gentiles are going to be doing in that day, out there in the day of the Lord, the 70th week of Daniel, and these two issues are His cause against them and what He's avenging. Okay? Now, come over to Zechariah 12. So let's look at them. All right? Zechariah 12. Zechariah 12 doesn't get to go to church as much as 14 does and 8 does and other passages. But Zechariah 12, verse 1, the burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth and formeth the spirit of man within him. That's a wonderful passage, by the way. Wonderful verse. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. That's a very telling 3 verses there. Again, a wonderful passage here with what we're looking at. So He's going to gather them together, and there's 2 groups of the Gentile there. Verse 3, and in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. The end of the verse, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. He's going to gather all the people of the earth, and He's going to make Jerusalem and Judah a pain in the neck, a burdensome stone. Israel is going to be an international problem to the world, the whole earth. The focus of the constraint, the issues, the headaches is going to be there It's going to be on board completely. The whole world is going to be tired of her and ready to just wipe her out, scatter her among the nations. Now, that's not now, okay? It's not in time past. This is future during the 70th week. Here's the condition. This verse doesn't just talk about all the nations again, the whole earth is involved here. This doesn't leave America out because America's blessing Israel. Ooh, no, not at all. America is going to probably be one of the major leaders in this. Why? Because they're Gentiles. And this is going to have nothing to do with what was set up in the, again, we have such a warped sense of history and of what's really happening. Now, these verses don't just talk about all the nations of the earth coming up. There's also a group in verse 2. Look at verse 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people, where? Round about. A cup of trembling. They're nervous. They got to tremble. They got to shake. Not a disease shake. There's a cup of trembling, okay? And they can't hold the cup steady. In other words, Jerusalem is a real point of contention. Judah, there's difficult. They're such a thorn in the world that all the people around about now. So we've got all the world, and then we got the people round about it. And they're all focused in on Israel, on Jerusalem. And if you think about who's out there all around them, he's Daniel, Psalms, Revelation, talks about the 10 nations, okay? They're confederate against Israel. The 10 nations that are part of the Antichrist, those are what he's talking about. Those are the ones in the Middle East around Israel, politically. And that's where they're at. So we've got two, you got to kind of have to think about this. There's a controversy around Israel. He's going to cup a trembling unto all the people round about when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now, you got to think about that. Think about the Middle East today. They don't like each other. You know, when on October 7th, a couple years ago, and all that stuff started happening, and Israel moved into Gaza and started pushing the Palestinians, which are Arabs, down to Egypt. What did Egypt do? Stopped them at the gate. They didn't let them in. Why? They don't want that. They don't like them. They're cousins. They don't care. You're not coming into our country. You're not bringing you know. But what was always fascinating to me is there's another group of Palestinians north. Why they didn't go up there? They don't want them. And they're more cousin related than any. So when you think about this is going to, in the situation when this happens, they're not friendly with one another. And yet, they've now confederated together. They've come together. They've got together, never gotten together before, and now they are against who? Jerusalem and Judah. So their hatred for Israel overshadows the family nonsense, the politics, and God, and they're gonna come up against the siege, both against Judah and Jerusalem. Verse 3, all that burden themselves, which it shall be cut into pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against. So not only is that those 10 confederate nations around in the Middle East, but the whole world now has come up. By the way, what fuels their hatred of Israel is their commonality of Islam, honestly. That's what fuels it. And as we go along, we'll see some of that here as we kind of play this through. But what I want you to catch is the reason the nations are gathered together against Israel, Jerusalem and Judah, is because of the people in verse 2. Okay? The reason all the people of the world now are called to the scene is because of what's going on around in verse 2. And that's why, by the way, they're listed first in verse 2 and not verse 3. So it's going to grow into an international problem. And it's really going to be a rather tough situation that's going to play out. And again, never before has any of the nations of the Middle East joined together. Only when they've never have. You know, you think about the peace accords and all that and stuff that Carter did and Reagan did and all this, and where is it? They're just signing on the dotted line to keep things moving along. And again, that's what's going to happen. Come over to Zechariah 14. So, in thinking about Joel 3:2, his cause, you're going to scatter my people among the nations, and then you're going to part in my land. Zechariah 14, verse 1, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of them, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. By the way, that's why I say this isn't everybody in America over there. It's our military that's over there representing the nation. Why? This is battle. We're calling them to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth where? Into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Well, what did Joel 3:2 say? Hey, they're going to cause whom they have scattered among the nations. And there it is. What are they doing? They're sending, here it is. Jerusalem is attacked, all right? Half of them go off into captivity. They're scattered out there amongst. So this is taking place during the 70th week. This isn't taking place AD 70, that nonsense, okay? This is taking place here in a future event where all of those countries around about Jerusalem and Judah are going to coalesce together, and they're going to attack Jerusalem. And they're going to sack it, see? And they're going to do what verse 2 says. This hasn't happened yet, but it's coming. So then what is he? He comes to avenge his cause. The Lord, here comes the Lord. The next thing up is verse 3, then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations whom he fought in the day of battle. As when he fought in the day of battle. What's he going to do? Now the second coming is here. So right before his ultimate return, they're going to attack and sack Jerusalem. And he says, all right, I'm coming back now there. I'm coming up against the Gentiles. And you know what it is? It's very interesting. Who's doing the attacking? It's the Arabs, it's the Middle East groups. But who do they have as their backup? All the Gentile nations of the world. He's done what? He's called them to the battlefield. And what they're doing in the 70th week is really the culmination of what they've been doing all along. And I'm talking about the Gentiles, okay? What they've been doing all through the captivity. Come over with me to Luke 21. Luke 21. Even today, even though Luke 21, the dispensation of grace interrupts prophecy, Israel is still numbered among the Gentiles. That's where they are. They don't even sit in a not even a millimeter of the land promised to them, and they have every right and all this as a nation because of a bunch of Gentiles back in the early 1900s, and that's where it starts. Actually, it starts way back before that, but we see it in the history books. So Luke 21, So what then do the theologians in religion do? Well, they read Scofield's note and Larkin's stuff and Darby and all those guys. And he says here that verse 20, which is where we want to be, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. And then you have the preterist view come up, and it comes off of this. It says, see, Titus in AD 70 sacks Jerusalem, and there's the fulfillment of verse 20. Verse 20 is looking where? Future. Hasn't even happened yet. And they begin to talk about what we read in Zechariah 14, and they're talking about this over here, and he's talking about this, and they just start trying to place it. Rather than leave it as where it is, they move it out, and they make it say something that it's not about. You see, that when you see the nations gathered, okay, that's what Joel 3:2 just told us. That's what Zechariah 12, Zechariah 14 just told us he's going to do. That's what Zephaniah is telling us. So when you see all that, guess what's coming? Wrath. So verse 21, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Let not them, this is Matthew 25, 24 and 25. Let not them that are in the countries enter therein, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. See, look, there it is. It's all been fulfilled because of this sacking and all this stuff. And they just, instead of recognize the dispensational interruption, which is what they failed to do, they have to say, well, here it is. By the way, Rome sacks Jerusalem 3 times. 70's in the middle. There's 113 or 130 something AD, but now they have a new acronym, CE or something. Anyway, Common Era. Yeah, there you go. That's what I was trying to think of, was what the CE meant. Okay, and so when you look at that, verse 23. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away, now watch, captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now that's not Romans 11, the fullness of the Gentiles. That's the body of Christ. But this time of the Gentiles, he's talking about again, starts with the Babylonian captivity and goes all the way out, and it doesn't end until the end of the 70th week in the 77, in the second coming of the Lord. So right now, technically, if you want to get technical, we're in the times of the Gentiles still, because who's running the show? The Gentiles are. I know prophecy is interrupted. The fulfillment of prophecy is interrupted. So when you begin to look around and you see what's happening today, this is just the prelim to this being fulfilled. And again, and that's why people struggle so much with, prophecy is being fulfilled. No, you're seeing how it can come to pass. How it can. Can you imagine, you study and you look through things, and you go, man, nobody would ever fall for the Antichrist. How could they fall for him and do it so fast? Not even a year. And then you see something like COVID hit, and you see how fast, not America, but the world fell for the politician's line. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Smooth as butter. And then it's like, wow, that could happen really quick. What's going to happen here? Verse 24, they're going to be led away captive into all the nations. And this isn't the end. This isn't Babylonian captivity. This is during that 70th week period of time. And that's where we're at in Joel 3. The scattering, the leading away captive, it takes place in the middle of the week. And you go to Revelation 11 and you can look at all of that, the timing, and we'll do that as we go. Okay? So he says, when I gather, you're in Luke, look over at Luke 25, but Joel 3, he says, when I gather all the nations, okay, when I deal with you, believing remnant, put you in the land, do that, I'm then going to gather all the nations, and then I'm going to deal with them. They messed with my people, and I'm going to mess with them now. And the first cause, the first reason is because you scattered my people amongst the nations. Instead of leaving them alone in Jerusalem, you went down there and picked on Jerusalem, and now it's on. Okay? But then he says, the second part, and parted my land. Well, look at Luke 25. Parted the land. Well, Luke 20, I'm sorry, not Luke 25. There isn't a Luke 25. I can't even read my own writing. Leviticus 25. You just got to yell at me a little louder. Eh? What'd you say? Leviticus 25. About parting the land. Dividing the land up amongst themselves. That's what they're doing here. So you think about the Gentile. He's out there. He's scattered out. He's taken Jerusalem, got rid of the people, scattered them among the nations. And then he takes Judah, Jerusalem, the land, and divides it up amongst themselves. By the way, we've seen this already in history. Leviticus 25, look at verse 23. The land shall not be sold forever. The land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. The land was never to be sold. They weren't to give up land for peace. See? They weren't to parse it out. To do that is to defy the God of Israel, the God of the Bible. It's His land. It's mine. For the land shall be not forever. The land is mine. It's my planet. I've given it to Israel. And you're not to sell it. You're not to part it. You're not to divide it up. So what did the Gentiles do? They parted it up. And to do the very thing that God said don't do, they take Israel out of the land. They divide the land up amongst themselves. And again, we've seen that happen. UN Resolution 181 divided the land. That's back from 1947, by the way. Okay? I Googled this because I wanted to see in history if we've done this before, and the answer is, oh yes, we have. And I say we, I'm talking about Gentiles. 1917, so we're after World War I. They declared that Israel needed a homeland, the land of Palestine. Okay? Now, that's not a new name. Rome in 135 AD, not 70 AD, renamed the land Palestine after the arch enemy of Israel, the Philistines, because that's where the Philistines lived. So they took the most hated enemy. Rome was so sick and tired of the Jews. They were. Nero hadn't killed enough of them. He was wanting more. So they're so done with the Jews and with their rebelling against Rome. So they renamed the land. The first people, they renamed that land, not the land of the Jews or Israel, but the land of Palestine. The arch enemy, the Philistines. But who lived in the land? The Jews did. Okay? By the way, come back to Joel 3, just so get some. Okay? By the way, Joel 3, look at verse 4. So you don't think I'm talking out of left field. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zion, and all the coast of... Isn't that interesting? Don't you think the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, knew who was going to be over there in the future? So he calls it what it is now. By the way, if you look down at verse 6, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the who? The Grecians. Who's in charge? The Gentiles. The Greeks are. The Medes, the Persians, and then Greece. That's Daniel's vision. He knows who's coming. By the way, the Greeks, the empire of the Greeks was busted up into four. The first one is the Greco-Roman Empire, it's called. There's Rome. And then you've got Syria, Turkey, and Egypt that come out of it after Alexander the Great's gone. So who's in charge? The empire of Greece is still in charge. The reason they renamed Palestine. Now, the Palestine today is a political name that Yasser Arafat back in the 50s and 60s and 70s developed just so he could needle the Jews. But in 1917, there's a declaration coming out of that war, that Israel needs a homeland. 1919, the Paris Peace agreed with it. 1922, the League of Nations, they come in and they say, yep, and we're going to send Israel into the homeland, the land of Israel, the land of Palestine, and they divided it up. But in 1947, 20 years later, roughly, after World War II, okay, now what happened to the Jews in World War II? Not a good time, all right? They said, we're going to give you your homeland back to you. Israel said, we ain't having it. We're just going to take it ourselves, and then they go to war. And as soon as the League of Nations said, you're good to go, you're a country now, you're on your own, you're a nation, all of the nations around them started attacking Israel. So Israel said, we can just defend ourselves, and then they beat the snot out of all of them. And it's like, whoa, what happened here? But at UN Resolution 181, which was November 29th, 1947, I wrote it down, this resolution called for the partitioning of the land of Palestine. Israel got 13% of the land. 75% of the land went to the Arabs and for oil. So Israel didn't get what was hers. From 1967 to 1989, there was roughly 865 UN resolutions. 586 of them were against Israel specifically. See, what's going to happen in the future is happening right now. We can see it. So when we study Joel 3 here and we look at what the Lord's going to come back and He's going to gather all the nations and He's going to avenge His cause, the Gentile doesn't know this, but here we sit, and I know today's the body of Christ, dispensation of grace. We just see the prelude to what's coming. Now, you got to think about this. If the Lord comes back here tonight, still here. Oh, that was the air conditioner. Whew, thought we were coming. All right. If the Lord tarries, then what's going to happen? It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay. By the way, you saw the last administration of our country distance themselves from Israel as much as possibly could. And if the Congress had distanced, Israel would have been on her own. But Congress still wouldn't allow that. It's just gone. Okay? The attitude, the thinking, that's what I'm trying to get you to see. This isn't anything new. Okay? It's what the verses are talking about. Now, they're not talking about UN Resolution 181, okay? but rather it's talking about the attitude, the thinking, the how this verse in the future can come to pass. And it's important to catch that, I think, anyway. Okay? So if a bunch of Gentiles today can do it now, when Satan is let loose full bore, no holds, nothing's holding him back, what do you think it's going to be on him? It's going to be just brutality. And that's why God says, okay, here I come. And I'm going to get even with the Gentiles about all this. I'm going to scatter, you have scattered my nation, okay? And you're breaking up the land, and those are the two things I'm not going to allow you to get away with. And I'm going to come in because it's my people in my land. And then verse 2, for my heritage, Israel. And that's the issue there, heritage. You think about inheritance, but it's more than that. It's not an he gives the land to Israel, and Israel is his inheritance, yes. But it's more of, I have a plan for my people in my land. And I got something I'm going to do here with my people in my land. And I got a plan for his people in his land, and the Gentiles are in there making it so that it will not happen. They're just messing it up. And they're doing it by scattering the people. You can't find them. And then dividing up the land so you can't use it. Now think about, that ought to sound familiar. It's a little guy by the name of Joshua and a little guy by the name of Joseph. And what did they have to do? Moses tells them, when you go into that land, you wipe them out. You don't leave them standing. You don't give them an opportunity to regroup. You go in there and you wipe them out. Joshua gets to the end down there and says, I've done my job. Now it's on the next generation. And the next generation, the next thing you know, they're leaving a little here and a little there. And now it's done. So when God said, Joel 3:2, I got the believing remnant picked back up. I got you guys in your land. And when I will also be cleaning the clock. I'll gather Israel back into the land, and then I'm coming after you, Gentile. And when I do, I'm going to do now verse 4 to the end, down to about verse 16 or so, and we'll see all of that. But verse 3, we'll get this next time. It's not time. I don't have enough time to get into verse 3. And they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. You see the and. So here's another cause. And we'll talk about all that next time. Right now, just catch, when God does this, He's not just doing it because He's got nothing to do. He is setting something. I have a score to settle with the Gentiles, and I'm going to do it. And these are real things. They're real times. They're really going to happen. And He's doing it, and it's going to happen in that 70th week, in the middle of it, the midst of it. And that's why it's the day of the Lord. It's His day. You know, like your birthday, it's your day. It's His day. And He's going to zero out the account. You scattered my people, you're dividing up my land, and that's what they're doing during the 70th week. Okay? And He's going to get His revenge on them, and He's going to come back and deal with them in a literal, physical, visible manner, and He's just going to wipe them out. Okay? Now, I know we're 10 minutes early, so I'm going to give it back to you because I need an hour to go through 3, okay? But I just wanted you to catch what's happening here. He's not just letting them off the hook, but as He calls, the armies of the world are called to the battlefield. And again, Matthew 25, not all the Gentiles are going to do this. but all the Gentile nations are. So as America sends the army, the first platoon or whatever over there will be Gentiles here helping believing remnant members here. Not a Jew, a believing remnant member, a believer. Because, again, James, he tells us there, and John in Revelation, if they were of us, they would have stuck with us, but they didn't, they departed. Revelation 2 and 3 they're of the synagogue Satan. They've departed. Why? Because they're apostate, they're unbelievers. And we've already seen that in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Okay? So we'll do 3:3 next time. All right? All right. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the evening, Lord. Thank you for your word. Look into it here and appreciate the dynamic of what will be accomplished in your day. And then thank you for what you're doing with us today in the age of grace and in the heavenly places. In your name we pray. Amen.